which said addendum reflects a 3% increase to the current superintendent's salary and any matters incident thereof. Let's go.
Wanna make fun of your shirt? In front of children.
And Ms. Viapando joined us at
Well,
6:02. No,
6:05.
5:02. 5:02. Ms. Hanson?
Can I move? I move that the board enter into a second contract addendum to the superintendent of schools contract, which said addendum reflects a 3% increase to the current superintendent's salary.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? 6. All opposed? 0. Ready for agenda prep for August 20th regular board meeting?
Madam President and members of the board, thank you very much. For agenda prep, we'll just skip down to item 6, reports, information, academic update. So in a couple of weeks, Ms. Ruiz-Mills and Ms. Hernsberger will give an accountability update based on our most up-to-date data that we have. We should have our A through F rating systems as a follow-up to the presentation that Mo Casey did. Item 2, Ms. Nicole Dre will be, if you remember last year, we started the standards-based grading at kindergarten, so we're rolling that up again this year to first grade. And so Ms. Dre will present to the board and the community on where we're heading. Item 3, student code of conduct updates. Ms. Ruiz-Mills will give us an update mainly as it regards to special education. As you know, we don't update our student code of conduct till the legislative session is in session, so 2019, we should get the new regulations and laws that are passed, and then we will go through the process like we did last year, where we have community members, principals, and other members review our student code of conduct, and then we bring that to the board. Under item B, we'll have a construction update from Uresti Coleman, and he will answer some questions that I know some board members have regarding specific schools that we talked about, timelines and what construction looks like for y'all. And then item C, Greg Hubenak will present a technology update, not in the sense of where we're at, but just kind of an overall picture of upgrades and systems that have been addressed over the summer to upgrade our technology in the districts. Item 7, approval of consent agenda items. Item A, approval of minutes for special call board meeting on June 12th, the regular scheduled board meeting on July 16th, 2018, and the special call board meeting on August 6th, 2018. We have item B, personnel action, that's left in there currently in the event that we have any issues that take place between now and then. Should we need to remove it, I'll get with Madam President. Item C, consider approval of resolution regarding extracurricular status of 4-H organizations. And item D, consider approval of adjunct faculty members Jason Mangold and Kate Blankenship. Last year, y'all approved this. This is our 4-H agreement we have. They work with the Texas A&M University system. And they're outside. There's only one change. And the major change is that their absences, like UIL students, they get 10 extenuated absences for their 4-H, which hasn't been happening. That's a change for this year, but we'll ask you to approve those. And 4-H goes all the way down to elementary, but they still follow UIL rules and regulations. Item 8, items for action. Ms. Griffith will present consideration and approval of budget amendments at this time. We don't have any at this time. Item B, consider ordinance of setting tax rate. Ms. Griffith, the rest, I believe, is actually Ms. Griffin's whole section. Item C, consider acceptance of certified appraisal rolls for the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District. Consider acceptance of the effective tax rate and rollback tax rate for the year 2017 from San Marcos CISD. Item E, approval of elementary renovation schematic design for Crockett, Travis, Mendez, Hernandez, and Bowie. Item F, consider approval of interlocal agreement between San Marcos CISD and the City of San Marcos, acting by and through the San Marcos Police Department for school resource officers, SROs.
Is that going to be different, or are we anticipating just a renewal?
We are anticipating renewal. We have made some updates to timelines of notification of asking them to please get with us sooner, and if it's a San Marcos student and or adult.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Is that gonna cover the, how many officers, SROs?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I put something in my mouth. Sorry, it's been a long day. Can you ask that question again, ma'am?
How many school, resource
Officers.
officers? How many?
Resource officers.
We currently have 4 school resource officers. At the end of last year, we had money put aside for a 5th. They pulled it the previous year from the city. I believe they're gonna they're gonna go for their 5th officer. In the meantime, we have an agreement with the San Marcos PD, and they put on their sign-in sheet anybody who wants to work over at Phoenix. And so, starting probably in February, we had officers that would show up for about 4 hours a day, which helped a lot, but I think they're gonna try and get this funded fully. Now, they did tell us that if they do get approval for this position, it probably would take another year because they have to go through training for about a year. So we'll continue with the arrangement that we have where they have a sign-up sheet and then we have an officer show up for at least 4 hours a day, usually about 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock during the meat of the day.
But we do have 4 for sure.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And how many are at the high school, here at the high school?
We have 2 here at the high school.
And 1 each on the other campuses?
Yes, ma'am.
But one of the middle schools shares.
No.
No? They
No.
don't share with
They do not.
Rebound or?
Phoenix doesn't have one.
Okay. So who covers rebound?
We have, that's the officer where we bring in 4 hours a day.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
part-time.
Part-time.
Part-time. Okay, we're ready to move into
I'm ready to adjourn.
presentation. Any other business? I'll entertain a motion.
Well,
Oh,
just as a matter of information for colleagues, I think some of us are attending the meeting with the city group on Friday.
if anybody has any issues or points they want to give to us, to bring to it.
Yeah, let us know in advance so we can raise them if you're not, yeah.
I'll entertain a
You
motion.
don't have an agenda?
No, I have not seen an agenda. All I've seen is an invitation with all the people that are gonna be there.
I'll check, and if there's an agenda,
Yeah.
I'll send it to the entire board.
Right, because
Well, I don't want there to be
I-
agenda now because we didn't participate in making it, so that would be like the city's agenda. So I guess this first one's gonna be, I mean, I thought that we might circulate something and say, these are the things we'll go, we wanna bring up, but without having done that, I doubt there's gonna be
Well,
something
if
this
you
late.
can send it to us, then we can add things,
Yeah.
based on what it looks like.
Absolutely. I would
Some
want y'all.
ideas.
Yeah, I would want y'all's feedback. Any issues to bring up? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Ms. Hanson moves. Do I hear a second? Ms. Costilla seconds. All in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Start a new meeting. Just be a meeting.
Good evening, Board President Cantu, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Cardona. My name is Monica Ruiz Mills, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching, Learning, and Assessments. This evening, we're going to have an academic presentation in which all of our principals will be providing their testing data from the STAR state assessment and the end of course assessment. The data that you will be seeing this evening represents all students on every campus. It is not the data that we'll be receiving tomorrow when we receive our data sets. The data sets that we receive tomorrow will be students that were here on snapshot date, which was October 27th, 2017. Those are all the students that were enrolled at SMCISD that get counted in our accountability. Tonight's data will also include students that were affected by the disruption, the 600 plus students, so their data is in here. But overall, you're going to see, and we will see, areas where we have shown growth, which is a celebration, but there are also opportunities for continued improvement and growth as well. The principals will give a 10-minute brief presentation, and at the end of each presentation, we will have opportunities to entertain any questions you may have to support and give us feedback on how we can continue enriching the lives of our students. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and begin with Miss Jennifer Gonzalez. No, we're not. With Miss Pam Thomas at Bowie. I started with the B.
Good evening, board members. Mr. Cardona, my name is Pam Thomas, and I'm principal of Bowie Elementary. So we will get started with our presentation, and okay, here we go. First of all, you're very familiar with these board commitments. I'd like to commend you on developing these for us so that we can use these as our guidepost as we're making decisions for our kids on our campus. So again, thank you for your work in those. As a campus, we're always reflecting and looking at our data to see how we can improve on our practices so that we can make better decisions in the future for our kiddos. So we'll begin here with our third grade scores. And you can see that when you're looking at our 2018 scores for both reading and math, we did see drops when compared to last year's scores in those same tested areas. We will be talking a little bit in a few more slides forward about some of the things that we intend to do to address those concerns. I do want to point out, though, that in looking at the bilingual population for both reading and math, those student groups outperformed our general populations, and so that was a big celebration for those kids in our campus as we've been growing and moving our bilingual program and our dual language program. Moving on into fourth grade, oh dear. Apologize for being so nervous. Okay. We're looking at fourth grade scores. These kids, as moving up into third and fourth grade, they did lose some ground compared to their scores the prior year. However, when compared to the previous year's fourth graders, they performed about 10 percentage points higher in each of those assessed areas. So we consider that as a celebration point as well. Also, as pointed out in this previous slide, we saw some of our bilingual classrooms outperforming those all student tested groups as well. A particular point of celebration, although it is not where we want to be by any means, was writing. We did see a gain of 8 percentage points in writing over last year. And we attribute that to both the campus and district focus of writing across the curriculum. So we see benefits in that and need to continue and grow that as we move forward. Looking at fifth grade, when comparing the 2017 data to this past 2018 data, our fifth graders decreased by 5 percentage points in each area. However, when looking at the cohort scores, we saw huge gains from 16 to 26 percentage points when you're looking at reading and math. So that was a huge celebration. This is telling us that we are growing those kids as they move up, and we are closing some of those gaps. Same trend line is also observed with our bilingual population, as the scores for reading and science, our bilingual classes outperformed our gen ed population once again. We were especially excited with the science with that bilingual class, in that we had a brand new teacher to 5th grade this past year, and she was very innovative and looking at some of the practices of different approaches with those kids. So she did some blended and flipped classroom design. She did a lot of problem-based and project-based learning with those kids, and a lot of playlists. So kids had lots of choice and opportunity to guide their own learning, so to speak. And so we saw some very positive gains in those approaches. Looking at our attendance data, I can't keep my hand off of this. I'm sorry, Mr. Barton. I apologize. I do better without technology. So looking at our attendance data, we've always been very blessed in that our kids love to be at school. So when we generally perform within the 95, 96 percentage. There we go. Last year we were at 95.2. Was a drop from the previous year, so we tend to hover around the 96. We'd like to make a goal this year of 96.4, and we plan to do that by continuing our motto of every student, every day. We support our kids, and we celebrate when they're here by classes, by grade level, and we will have the weekly attendance committee meetings, again, to support students that maybe have chronic absenteeism or tardiness, and develop plans of actions, and working with those students and those families to see how we can improve their attendance. As far as our social emotional support, again, we see some trends in the data. We did see although we saw an increase in some of our ISS placements last year, we did see significant decreases in OSS placements, and of course we had no DAEP placements this year. For next year, of course, our goal is to always keep kids into the classrooms, so we will reduce each of those by the numbers that you see there. And the way that we are doing that will be a continued implementation of our PBIS strategies, which is through our emergent tree support system that we have here, as well as utilizing our Pure Edge strategies with both kids and teachers, and our 7 mindsets. We have put in place for our master schedule this year a designated time for all classrooms so that all kids get the supports that they need for intentional, explicit instruction and social emotional development. I'm gonna let you be the clicker because I don't do very well with that. All right, so this past year we were very fortunate to work with the Transcend New Schools Collaborative, and as part of that work we spent lots of blood, sweat, and tears coming up with some design principles. The way these design principles were developed is, along with our district design team and our campus design team, we interviewed students, we interviewed family members, parents, community members, teachers, and we came up with the wants and needs of our stakeholders. We also did lots of learning with the collaborative and looking back into the science of learning and how it is that all of us learn best and what's needed for that to happen, as well as taking inspiration visits across the country. Very blessed to go visit lots of places in many different places across the country to see what kind of innovative practices are being employed now to deal with kids so that they are prepared for their future, since many times we don't even know what that's going to look like. So these are the design principles that we came up with. So in every decision that we're making, we're trying to hold true to these principles to make sure that we're honoring what our stakeholders and what our students need to be successful. So here we have our 1819 school model. Of course, you'll see there that we have our student outcomes, of course, in the middle. And some of the things that we are putting in practice for next year at Bowie in personalized learning is something that we've been studying and researching and wanting to implement at a greater depth. Inquiry-based learning, which you know as a board that you have supported that for the last several years. We'd like to continue that as we're seeing increased engagement and learning with that approach. Our multilingual learning, which is coming into play now with our second year of dual language. And we're looking into our multi-age learning. It's our belief that we want to replicate real world as much as we can. And so schools is about the only place that you are divided by age. And so we want to offer flexible grouping models so that kids can learn to collaborate, work together, develop those critical thinking and problem solving skills. So we have a lot of information on those different components. Mr. Cardona, Ms. Ruiz Mills, Nicole Dre, and a teacher from Bowie was on the district design team this past year. And so we would be glad to share more of our work. We were very blessed and honored to get to work with people all across the country and bring some ideas back to San Marcos. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Ms. Fiapando?
Yes. First of all, on the social-emotional support, so we had an increase in our in-school suspensions and a decrease in out-of-school suspensions. Is that why we have the increase in the in-school?
I'm sorry, is that one?
The reduction in out-of-school, is that because we have an increase in the
Yes,
in
because
school?
our goal is always to keep them in
To
class.
come in,
Of course, we have
okay.
no out-of-school suspensions for our K through 2, which was something we have talked to as a district about. We were so proud of that. The out-of-school suspension, there were some mandatory things this year, and sometimes we just don't have control of those mandatory. But of course, our goal is to keep all kids in the classroom. And we're hoping that our social-emotional, helping kids to understand how to regulate their bodies, and also teachers to know how to deal with the various things that go on to the classroom and supporting kids with those social-emotional needs in other ways.
Can I go ahead? Oh,
Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, do you have anything specific that you're changing from last year to this year to address some of the drops you saw in reading in 3rd and 5th grade?
Definitely. One of the things that we are doing at Bowie is this past year we have developed we're calling them content specialists, so for lack of a better word, departmentalized. So we have teachers that are teaching language arts and social studies and teachers that are teaching math and science, 2nd through 5th. As teachers have moved into those different roles, we've realized that teacher development is huge. And so we have invested not only as a district but as a campus in the development of those teachers. So specifically, we have 3 of our teachers attending the Master Reading Teacher cohort that the district has provided this summer and into next year. In addition to that, we had 4 teachers that just came back from a 2-day reading training with the Daily 5 and looking at all components of reading. And we have several new hires. In fact, I know of 2 new hires that have a reading certification. So reading, of course, is at the forefront because we know we have to produce kids that can read on grade level because reading is at really the heart of all of those tests. So that is definitely a focus at Bowie. Oh, yeah, he asked
Ms.
for that.
Costilla?
I mean, reading.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
in following up with Mr. McLaughlin, is the plan that you outlined, is it also what is going to be addressed over in the STAR 5th grade, where we saw a decrease from 2017 to the now?
Correct.
In reading and math?
Correct. We have, yes, and so we are addressing those reading concerns with the teacher development and with the math. We have sent 9 of our math teachers to a 4-day number lab training this summer, with 3 of those teachers going back for an additional week for in-depth training and planning. So looking at building students' number sense and also their engagement in reading.
So what you're outlining here is more teacher-focused.
Yes.
Is there anything going to be going on with classes working with students?
Yes, definitely. We're looking, this past year, we delved into the total school grouping cluster model, and so the way we are very intentionally grouping kids together so that we can provide those multi-tiered supports. As far as our intervention plan this year, we have grouped, again, made those classes strategically, and so that we can put the support into the classroom for those kids that need acceleration from our outside sources, for our co-teach classes, for our interventionists, that kind of thing. And of course, when I talked about the teacher development, we feel that you've got to have the best teachers right in front of those kids, and so teacher development is something that we feel very strongly that we need to grow our teachers in all areas.
Ms. Villalpando, you had another question?
Yes. You mentioned students helping students.
Yes.
And there used to be a PALS program. Do we still have a PALS program?
You know, the honest answer to that is I do not believe so. I know we do not have anyone coming from the high school to do that. We do have some mentoring programs, though. We have, of course, some retired individuals from this community that come in and mentor several of our kids. We also have some of our interns that are interning at Bowie will come back and support kids, but that is definitely something that we need to grow and to look how we can support those kids.
And speaking of the suspensions, in a way, and you probably mentioned it, but it's a celebration to move them, not let them go into out-of-school suspension and move them to in-school suspension so that they can stay in school.
And like I had said, our goal is always to keep them in the classroom, and whenever possible, we sometimes utilize lunch detention, you know, those kinds of things so that we can keep them in the classroom. But again, there are some instances where we have to do that, unfortunately.
Okay.
Ms. Hanson?
Tell me about how you're utilizing the dyslexia specialists. I know they pull kids, but are they also going into classrooms and doing model teaching for the reading teachers?
Yes, Karen Wright is our dyslexia specialist, and so she does do model lessons. She provides after-school training for our teachers when we're looking at phonemic awareness, the early reading skills. She has a very strong background in that, so she works with teachers in that way. We also have her, so she does the pull-out for some of those identified kids. She also provides intervention so that we want to be able to catch those kids. Early intervention is the key, right? Because by the time they get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, the gap is too wide. So our focus will even be so more this year that we can get early identification and get those kids involved in intervention so we can close the gaps before they have a chance to get so wide. You're welcome.
Just a general point. Did you have something?
I did, but I can wait.
And I think this was the format that you were probably given to input.
Correct.
But the next time I see this, I would prefer the year-by-year comparison on the students meeting expectations, because I think approaches expectations is kind of a low bar. You know, we have to
Correct.
improve that. But
Yes,
ultimately you had, 41% meeting expectations on reading of your. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the 4th grade. 38% meeting. 39% meeting expectations on reading in 5th grade. That concerns me because if they're heading into middle school not meeting expectations, they're basically moving in there with a deficit that's going to continue to follow Goodnight and other schools. But I don't know, just looking at this, that 39% may be a 9-point improvement. I don't know. So if next time you could give that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you for that feedback.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. Yeah, Ms. Thomas, I just had a question on the attendance slide. So obviously you'll have a plan of action to address these issues, but as a trustee, I'd like to know, and I'm going to ask this of every campus on this slide at the end of their presentation, if y'all are collecting data of what that 4% of absences is. Is it they're out sick? Is it some other various type of reasons? What is that typically y'all are seeing as why they're not in school?
Typically with our kids, especially at the elementary level, it is due to illness. Every time kids are absent, then our parents are really good about bringing doctor's notes and that kind of thing. So a lot of ours, I know this past year, there were some illnesses that a lot of flu that went around, and so, you know, you have those kinds of things to account for. But yes, we do have that information, and very few kids are just just don't come to school, especially at the elementary level. No. Yeah.
Anyone else? Good job.
Thank you for
guys.
going first, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you.
I know, it had to be hard.
I apologize for my tech problem.
I'll actually give you
Good evening, Board President, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Cardona. I am Keith Cunningham, Principal of Crockett. This is Crockett's AP, Dolores Cruz. She's going to handle my clicker for me so I don't mess it up. I got my notes here electronically so I won't go off on any rabbit holes. Okay, obviously Crockett Elementary, our cores, we'll come back to them in a little bit. Third grade scores. We knew before testing season that our third grade faced some difficulties based upon their reading levels. So we were fully expecting that, okay, third grade might have a dip. Obviously, this was reflected in our passing rate. We were actually concerned that it was going to be lower than it was, so the fact that it was in the 70s was actually, we were worried it was going to be in the 60s. So that was actually kind of pleasing to see. But we know that this group is going to be a special area of focus for fourth grade. So what does that look like? First of all, and this is going to be for all tested subject, but I'm going to just talk about it here. This is how we're going to address it. Every fourth grade teacher that's getting a third grade kid is going to have a list of their kids and how they performed on the test last year, and they're going to know the areas of strength and weakness. And I'm going to have an expectation that by the end of the first week of PD, there is a game plan individualized for each kid in their class. We already have that. I've already talked to our instructional coaching. We already know fourth grade is going to be an area of concern going in. We're going to use our AVID tutors when we get them. Basically, we're going to throw all the resources we can at fourth grade because we know that's an area of concern. I guess one of the kind of glass half full kind of things about third grade scoring, there's a great level of possibility for growth in fourth grade. So I'm optimistic that having these kids identified already where they're at and what they need individually, we have a game plan in place for it. Next, Ms. Cruz. Okay, fourth grade, you see slight raises in approaches to last year's score, slight decline in the cohort score, nice raise in math, slight raise in writing. I looked at, and it's not on there, but I thought I'd just verbally say it, I was pleased to see our meets and masters in reading and writing compared to the state average. In reading, our fourth graders were 9 and 8 points above meets and masters respectively, and 13 and 8 points above state average in writing. In other words, it really seems like the Crockett fourth grade team is really poised to take on the challenge of moving kids where they need to be, including meets and masters. So again, going back to my third grade cohort, I'm really optimistic that the fourth grade team is going to take the data that they use. And the fourth grade team is very data oriented. They're very good at looking at what the kids have, where they're at and what they need, and using that accordingly, especially if we give them extra support from the get-go. So again, I'm optimistic that fourth grade is going to show a lot of gains compared to where they were last year. Next slide, Ms. Cruz. Okay, fifth grade saw nice raises across the board. Really nice gains in meets and masters as well, with 13 and 9 point increases in math, meets and masters, and 16 and 10 points is up in reading. That was compared to the scores last year. So I compared that when I just said the meets and masters. That was my fifth grade last year compared to this year. We scored 13 and 9 in meets and masters, 16 and 10 points up in reading. So not only did we see a great increase in the approaches, but we also, I saw it as evidence that our team was really pushing the higher end kids to score above and get where they need to be. Let me see. Fifth grade science, although we saw a bump, which was good, it was not as much as we expected, especially given the first round when we saw how strong the reading scores came in. And upon debriefing after the fact of what happened, this didn't come out the way we thought it was going to be, we really kind of attribute it to the fact that we got off on our pacing a little bit early at the beginning of the year. probably because we're trying to get our heads around working a science fair in. So we've already reached out to Gordy Hall, who's the science instructional coach for elementary, and put in plans in place to make sure that doesn't happen again, so we get a more robust review. And also the curriculum mapping, the curriculum document that the TLA came up with is really going to help us with that. So I'm confident that the issue we saw with 5th grade science is going to be addressed in making sure we're more purposeful with our pacing. Next page. Yes. Okay, attendance. Okay, obviously we've seen a decline in attendance the past couple of years. Our goal for next year is the 96.5. We kind of tracked with the rest of the district, and I believe Crockett was the highest in the district, but we were a little bit low, and honestly, flu came in and wiped us out a couple times. I know my own son goes to Miller, and he missed almost 20 days of school because he got flu twice. So it was a really bad year for that. So I think some of that. But where we're going, our goal for this is we actually attended the E3 Alliance conference today in Austin with our entire attendance team, and we're really revamping our strategies and systems, which are pretty good, I think, already. But now it's going to be much more strategic and much more purposeful. I was really pleased what came out of it. We also thank y'all for given us a parent liaison full-time. She is going to, one of her main jobs is going to be, once we figure out who are, I call them high flyers, the kids that either chronic attendance issues, once we find out who they are, and we already know some of them already going into the year, we're going to create a system where by 8:15, 8:30 at the latest, we know those kids aren't here, and she's going to make a phone calls to every single one of them to figure out, why aren't you here, what can we do? So that's going to address that. We're really going to put her to use to address this. Because, the more, I question the methodology they said today. It basically said for every day you miss, it's 1 point on a test score. But if you're not in school, you're not learning. And so the more we can get the kids to school, the better it is for the outcome. So she's going to be a big part of that. We're also going to use many more incentives to get kids in class. They made a big deal about the E3, but have 20-day plans. And so we're really going to kind of structure around every 20 days, there's going to be some kind of celebration of this class did this, these kids did this, but really incentivize, because we know economically incentives work better than punishments. And just from a moral aspect, I'd much prefer to lure a kid in with because you feel welcome, we're doing something for you, rather than you do this now because that's just forced compliance. Okay, our social-emotional support. Obviously, our ISS has gone down, our out-of-school suspensions went down, no DAP, no OSS for K through 2nd. Really, the philosophy I think that drove this was, I'm going to make my notes before I start getting off in the weeds, okay? I can go off on this. It disappeared. Okay, our strong belief is that kids do not learn when they're out of the classroom, so we need to do everything to ensure that they stay in the classroom. So do kids have disruptive behaviors and need to be removed from the classrooms? Of course they do. But we are opposed to sending them to ISS and just locking them up and we'll see you in 3 days. Instead, we have a restorative model where once the behavior has been pulled back into check, and sometimes there's apology letters, a whole system we go through, but the whole goal of the discipline system is to get the kids in the classrooms as often as possible and take them out as infrequently as possible. And I think it's been pretty successful. For next year, our goals, we have the tier 3 behavior issues. These are your kids that have the most problems. And last year, we were kind of throwing everything at our handful of kids that have repeated issues. And I'm really excited because our whole team was excited because it went to it. This gives us a systematic, data-driven, best practice, scientific method to deal with these issues. So I really think I'm helping them be more successful. The other two, the DBRC and our positive to redirection ratio, we already do that. We're just going to kind of refine things like, let's make sure our mentors are more strategically placed, and really, system's already working, how can we make them even work more fluidly? Yes, run out of time. Okay. Okay, our emphasis. AVID is going to be one. AVID is going to help students become stronger academically by exposing them to more rigorous questioning, writing, and speaking opportunities. as well as to help them believe in themselves, be more mindful of what they do as students to help them achieve their long-term goals, college and career. We'll be highlighting AVID strategies in the classroom to increase our pedagogy in a systematic manner. I believe these will definitely be useful for addressing our needs for both the 4th graders incoming and 5th grade science, because AVID is just much more critically engaging pedagogy. And while I could argue it addresses all of our core commitments, I believe it is especially important for establishing a rigorous academic culture where all students graduate career and college ready. Next slide, Crockett Cares Community. Basically, we're going to create a new mentoring program using community resources to really help some of our most difficult kids, or most challenging kids, to give them a deeper connection to school. Next, we're going to create a new mindfulness committee to basically work with I can go on? Okay. Forming a committee to implement peer edge and mindfulness throughout Crockett. This should greatly contribute to a more nurturing and welcoming environment, which will lead to greater academic and socio-emotional outcomes for our kids and staff. I feel this matches nicely with creating a culture of high expectations for performance and professionalism. And finally, we know that forming meaningful reciprocal partnerships and opportunities which serve students, families, and the San Marcos community, our final commitment as a district, is critical to having a well-functioning school that contributes to a healthy body politic and democracy. We are going to create ever more opportunities to do this in 2018-19, continuing things like our satellite meetings that we've been hosting at our government housing projects. We've gone as a leadership team, our counselors and some teachers, out to the different housing projects to meet with parents and let them, to just listen to them and how can we help their dreams become reality. We're going to add things like community hike nights once a quarter out in the green spaces in town, led by our new PE teacher. I really would like to create these opportunities that we've had at Chapultepec and Allenwood. How can we do that in each of our communities in the zone and really put Crockett's face out into the community and let them know that we're there to serve them and to listen to them? Because I think that's going to, that's just the right thing to do as a community. We serve the communities. But getting out there and letting the communities know what we're about and listening to them can't help but help student outcomes. Thank you. Sorry going over.
I'd like to commend you on your comment about using your parent liaison to help with attendance. I would think that all the schools would be doing that, getting your parent liaison to go out and visit when there's habitual absences. I think that's important.
Thank you.
Anybody? Questions, comments? Thank you. Very good report.
Thank y'all.
Good evening, Board President, Board Trustees, and Superintendent Cardona. I'm Ana Villanueva, and I'm the principal at De Zavala Elementary. Okay, so on here we have, again, our core commitments, and so everything that we do on the campus goes back to making sure that we are following the core commitments, and of course that we are, closing the achievement gap for our students. So when we're looking at our 3rd grade data, this is going to be our first cohort of STAR testing that we're going to be following. We did see an increase of 2% for our reading. It was very significant for our ELLs, especially our Spanish students. We saw a 70% increase of passing on those, and also that cohort the year before, it was only 8%. So that was 62% increase on that. And again, this is really important to us at De Zavala because we are really committed to the elimination of achievement gaps for our students. In math, we did see a decline for 6%. Now, we're going to embrace this opportunity. Again, we know that we have some work ahead of us. Again, seeing it as an opportunity. We want to celebrate the growth of our ELL students from 50% passing rate of the prior cohort to 53% passing. Okay, moving on to fourth grade, we did see reading and math from prior year that we did make an increase. So from last school year, it was from 58% to 60%. And then the math from 50 to 68, significant 18% increase on that. Now, the one for fourth grade writing, that is our area of most concern, and we know that we have to be really creative in trying to figure out what strategies can we have for our teachers, for our students, to see that our students do better when it comes to writing. And even a state, I think state percentages for writing is 60%. So across the state, across the campus, we are seeing a struggle with writing. So we know that we have a lot of work to do with that. In both third and fourth grade, we did not see the STAR score increase with our special education students. Now, we did see an increase in their scale scores, which are not reflected on here. So we do see kids actually moving from whenever they took STAR in third grade to fourth grade. We are seeing an increase of 100 or more points within each student. However, when we're looking at our STAR scores, that's not reflected. We know that one of the major challenges at Days of Allah is just the rigor of that academic language. And so I think for our students, 33% of our students are ELL. And for the other students that are not classified as ELL, they also come from ELL homes, and so they fall kind of within that same category of the students. Our teachers are working really hard at seeing that we are providing them with opportunities to increase that academic language, because our kiddos, they know a lot of things, but if it's just worded differently than what they're accustomed to, then that throws them completely off. So we have to continue to provide opportunities for them to be able to just kind of expand on that language, on that academic language. When we look at our fifth grade, again, this is probably the one area if we look at that same class in 2017, in fifth grade reading, that same exact class scored at 51%, and they went up to 74%. So that was a significant increase. In math, from 50% to 78%, again, a significant increase. Also, the number of students that moved to meets and masters doubled from prior years. So we really saw a lot of growth with our fifth grade students. Again, once they understand that vocabulary, and it takes us a little bit longer sometimes to get them to where they need to be at, we feel really good about what we are doing with our students, that it does work, but it takes us a little bit longer to kind of get them there. We are, it was a huge celebration for our science scores. Last year we scored 51%, came up to a 74%. I would like to add it was highest in the district, so we're really excited about that.
Gotta brag.
So that was a huge celebration. Again, just making those experiences relevant to our students, providing with those hands-on opportunities, our kids are able to achieve success, but sometimes it's just not as easy, because understanding something, even when we are speaking with our students, you could be having a conversation with them and you translate that word in Spanish and they're like, oh, now I know what you're talking about. And so I think just continuing to improve the academic language for our students, I think that is really the biggest task that we have there at Days of Allah. So again, also looking at our LEP numbers and special education students here, we've seen, the other ones were really not moving. We're seeing 53% of our LEP students that met the science, and 33 of our special education students. With our attendance, we were third. I think it was, Crockett, Bowie, and then ourselves at 95%. We do want to, our goal is to increase attendance to 97%, continue to have incentives, attendance incentives for our students, and also provide parent education. I think it's really important for parents to understand the importance of their child being there every single day, because every single day matters. And then our other one here is begin to use the school status, which is our new system that district we will be using to track and log the parent contacts that we have with our families. In fact, when I came back from our 2 weeks vacation, I saw that Mr. David Underwood, all the students that he contacted about summer school, he was making contact, and so I could call those parents and figure out that, so I saw that because some of the parents said, I didn't know my child was supposed to be in summer school. And so I could log on there, and I was able to say, I can see on here that Mr. Underwood called you a couple of times. He must have not been successful, or he sent you a text message. And so that kind of gives that accountability also to parents that, we are all in communication and that we communicate with one another. Also, use of the full-time parent liaison. Thank you for a full-time parent liaison. We are very grateful. To support our teachers and administration in the building for positive relationships with families. I think they're always kind of that happy face. Sometimes with administration, we have like the rules and some of the other things that sometimes parents are not just so eager to come and see us. But the parent liaisons are always there for parents, and they need to, when a parent comes to them with a concern or a reason, then they can always come to us so we can go ahead and problem solve on how to, best assist parents. For our social emotional support, we did see that we had a large number of in-school suspensions on our campus, and that was primarily due to the administration. I think that we were coding things incorrectly, and that was an error that we identified on our part. We really do not have a lot of behavior issues at Days of Allah. Even within our focus program, the numbers have definitely decreased. We really, truly do believe in positive behavior and just increasing the positive relationships with students. So we'll revise our Tier 1 framework to make sure that we are all speaking the same language, because I think it was an error on our part, and therefore teachers misunderstood certain things. And so we're going to own that, and we're going to go ahead and fix that for our Tier 1 framework. Also increase the use of bridges lessons for specific behaviors. So again, trying to be more proactive, rather than reactive, teaching our students specific skills that are needed so that they don't continue to make the same mistake. Because as adults, if we don't know that we are doing something, then, that it's not appropriate, then sometimes, we continue to do it unless we have clear understanding of that. And then one of the things that we saw great success with was our mentoring program within our campus. Teachers mentored 5th grade students, and I also think that was significant to why we saw just the scores just increase. We saw students in 5th grade that had never passed a STAR test to passing STAR for the very first time, so we're really successful about that, and we're going to go ahead and continue with the mentoring program. And for our campus emphasis, really excited about the dual language program on our campus. Definitely feel that our ELLs are going to greatly benefit from being with their monolingual peers. We can already see some of our ELLs even being a little bit more outgoing, where I think ELLs, culturally we tend to be a little bit shy and quiet and not just as outgoing, and so that communication between the ELLs and the monolinguals has been significant on our campus. Also, AVID. Last year we only had 3 teachers that were trained in AVID. This year we have 9, and then also for our co-teach, we went from 7 co-teach blocks for this upcoming school year. We were able to work with our master schedule to go ahead and add 14 blocks of co-teach, because we really do believe that inclusion is what is best for our students. And again, opportunity continues to knock at Days of Allah every single day, and we're going to take that opportunity. We're excited about the Fountas and Pinnell for K and first grade and pre-K. And also continue with the balanced literacy. Our coaching, cycle. I know that the coaches are working really hard with the campuses at how to improve best practices, PLCs, goal setting. Also, data-driven culture. We want to make sure that Days of Allah continues to be data-driven, looking at what where we're at, where we're going, and kind of what did we miss in between. Have writing across the curriculum. Continue to increase that, because we know that our students need as many opportunities as possible. emergency, we already talked about that. Social workers, we've been really blessed to have the social workers on campus working with their school counselor and just providing some of our students with just some of those, skills that are definitely necessary for them to be successful. Our partnerships with Texas State University, I've worked in, I think it's 10 different campuses. In all 10 different campuses, I had never seen the involvement of a college on a campus, and so really grateful and thankful for their support. And then, of course, the parent engagement. Our parents have really stepped out of just kind of bringing kids to school and picking them up to really taking part. We went from having one PTO parent that had been PTO president for I think 10 years to having a full board of PTO parents. So we feel really good about what's going on at De Zavala. I know our data sometimes doesn't show it, but if we just look at all the little pieces of growth, you could really see that our kids are really growing.
Questions?
Questions?
I have a question. You mentioned that the 59 on the in-school suspension was probably a coding. If you had to guess at what would be the real number if you hadn't had any coding issues?
And so honestly, our real number is going to be really, really small. And so the error that we found was that I think we were trying to be, Cynthia and I talked about it, and I think we were just trying to make sure that we were coding everything correctly. But some of the kids we were removing for a small period of time, and we were coding it as ISS because it was a partial, but we were really doing social, we were working with them on the behavior, on how to, reflection time. We really didn't even have an ISS teacher this past school year because the ILS that we were interested in hiring, she was over at Bowie, and so rather than just going with someone that was not a good ILS for our campus, we waited on that teacher to be our ILS, and so our ISS teacher became our ILS, which he did a great job, and so we didn't even have an ISS teacher, so I know we weren't really putting kids in ISS, but just our numbers were just not, maybe 10? Maybe 10, and
So
again,
it
it was
a very
our
small
error.
number. Any other questions?
What specifically do you plan to do next year to address the fourth grade writing? You identified it as an issue, but I missed the solution.
So, we're going to continue with writing across the curriculum, and just really making sure that during PLC times, we are looking at how are not just the fourth grade writing teachers, working on writing, but how is the kindergarten teacher working on our writing? How is the first grade teacher working on writing? How is everyone at every grade level, at every subject working on writing, and just providing our students with as many opportunities as possible to write?
How are they working on their writing, the teachers? Are they doing additional training on that? Or, it's hard to teach it if you don't do it.
Yes, and so they again, even throughout the year, we're going to look for different writing opportunities and work with the instructional coaches so that teachers understand what the writing tics are at each grade level and to see what they look like. I know that we began that even last year, looking at writing at fourth grade and really getting the teachers campus-wide to see what the expectations are at the different levels. And so some of the writing that fourth grade students were writing, some of the lower grade teachers thought that writing was acceptable, and so when they were able to see that writing was only maybe a 2 rather than a 4, and so really giving them examples of what those writing opportunities kind of look like.
And does the fourth grade, are your fourth grade teachers, do they teach all subjects, or is there some differentiation?
They are departmentalized, so we have our ELA teacher is reading and writing, and then we have a math and science, and so social studies is taught with the ELA block.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board President, school board members, and Superintendent Cardona. My name is Amber Owens. I'm the principal at Hernandez Elementary School. So the core commitments, everything that we do on campus is aligned to the core commitments. As we met with the campus improvement team, we really reflected on last year's campus improvement plan, looked at our performance objectives and our strategies to make sure that the work that we're doing is in fact aligned, especially as we were reviewing the campus needs assessment and making plans moving forward based on our data. As we're looking at our third grade scores, we had a 74% in reading. It was a slight decrease from last year, and then a 72% in math. Again, with that being said, this is a different group of students this year coming in when we had our first data coaching session with that third grade team to really look at the specific data, the common formative assessments, the benchmark data. We knew that our students were struggling. We were still teaching some students to read instead of reading for comprehension. We had some students that had not been identified for support services that were literally non-readers. We were looking at where the breakdown was in the vertical alignment with problem solving because students didn't really know how to attack the problem. So what are we not doing in second grade to prepare the students, because it was like the first time that they were seeing it, and really having that stamina and really understanding, you know, how to answer questions in a test genre. And so that is a conversation that we had today at CIT. We talked about the vertical alignment. One of the things that we're going to do to address to try to increase these scores to where when kids get to third grade, and this is the first time they have a high stakes test, is that we are going to have more intentional PLCs. We've had them on Wednesdays, and that's when our teams meet as grade levels, not just content, but as a grade level to really look at the data of the grade levels. We talked about, you know, no longer do we have bubble kids. We've got to make sure that we're making strategic plans for individual students, but really looking at the data in third, fourth, and fifth grade so that we're communicating with the lower grade levels. Last year in second grade, I will say, in the second semester after the data coaching that we implemented on campus, we did notice the breakdown specifically in math, and so the level of rigor that the instructional coaches were able to assist us with in developing those common formative assessments to give students the high levels of questioning did help, but we do have some more work to do, and so we have planned specific vertical alignment meetings with grade levels, with the grade above and the grade below next year. I think in addition to identifying the student learning objectives, the SLOs that we'll implement, that will also help us to make sure we're progress monitoring our team goals and our individual student data and having those conversations with the vertical teams. Sorry, will you go back? I wanted to also address the LEP students. This was a huge gain for us. I know that the numbers don't look really high, but when you're looking at our LEP students, we had 2 students in that group of our Ls that also received special ed services, and so being very intentional about the instruction that we were supporting and making sure we were providing the schedule of services for those students was very important. Trying to close that gap, the language gap, but also the specific learning disabilities and one student with an intellectual disability. Really working with, you know, we'll see what it looks like next year, but our students receiving special ed services, the 44% is not what we wanted, but we were very, very intentional. We put in professional development. We had a new co-teacher, and we made sure that they had explicit professional development in parallel teaching, station row teaching, you know, station rotations, and being very intentional about that co-teach time when they're in the general ed classroom. Okay, fourth grade. So when we're looking at fourth grade reading, we had 77%, math 76%, and fourth grade writing was 64%. It was an increase from the STAR scores of 2017, but when you look at the cohort scores, it was a drop. And that's one of the conversations that we had when we're really looking at Domain 2A and we're looking at the progress of the individual students. Did they meet the expected progress? Because one of our core commitments, our goals at Hernandez was last year, minimum years growth. We know that we have to grow kids a minimum of a year. Yes, we want points for them in Domain 1, but we've got to make sure that we're growing them at least a year. And so we had some conversations about specific individual students. Again, not all of the students are the same. One of the things I can say about fourth grade writing, after we had the 59% last year, one of the things that we did was strategically, the way we built the master schedule last year, we double blocked co-teach for reading and writing. Although, so an example, they would have 45 minutes of co-teach for ELA, and we blocked them for 90 minutes. And so it wasn't just students that received special ed services, students that were maybe tier 2, tier 3, and so that we could have 2 teachers in that classroom for that longer block of time, I think did help. We saw a huge increase on kids understanding how to write expository text specific to the text structure, like how do you plan out a good expository text? How do you make sure that you're staying on focus with the writing prompt? One of the areas that we're going to address, and we talked about in our campus improvement team today, was the revising and editing, so really the grammar and the mechanics. And I know I'm running out of time. LEP population, I do want to say, huge celebration. We had an ineffective teacher that was in that position for the first semester. We had a staff change at the end of January. New teacher, a lot of coaching, a lot of support in that classroom. Very proud of our L's and how they performed in that area. And again, we also had 2 students that are L's and SPED. We continue to work on our students receiving special ed services. We know that there's huge deficits, but again, when you're looking at individual students that may have just been identified at the end of 3rd grade, or in one case in 4th grade right before the test, from a non-reader to a middle of 2nd grade reading level, when we're looking at 2A in the progress measure, our students receiving special ed services are growing, so I'm proud of that. Okay, 5th grade. So the first round, you see 77% in reading, 88% in math, and then we increased to an 81% in reading and a 95% in math. We are excited about our student performance in that area. I know that Trustee McLaughlin is asking about the meets and when we're really looking at transitioning these kids to middle school, and I do think that it's important to pay attention to, are we growing them that year? And so when we're looking at the students in reading, we had all but 12 students to grow that year's growth, and only 3 in math that did not meet that requirement. And so working on what are we doing in 5th grade, how can we replicate that in 3rd grade, specifically in 3rd grade. And then our LEP students, we saw great gains in math for our students and a little bit of an increase in reading. As far as science, we were a little bit disappointed with our science scores. One of the things that we know is if our students are struggling in reading, if they're struggling and they're being pulled for 10-1 because they didn't meet that standard on the first round, sometimes that impacts the intense instruction with science. We do develop partnerships. We had Texas State come out. We had a great science camp. We plan our science lab schedule around 5th, 4th, and 3rd grade, but again, it's a vertical alignment issue. And one of the things that we're working with the science coaches on and during the vertical alignment is what are we working 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in science so that the 5th grade teachers aren't working so hard. What are we doing? There's TEKS that are tested in all of those grade levels but may not be introduced again. And so it's just important that we are more focused, more intentional, and more tight about the decisions we're making. Okay, attendance, really quickly, our attendance is not great. It's 94.6%. Just to remind you guys, we do have a high population of not just students receiving special ed services, 16%, but we had 5 classrooms, about 40 students that were in a self-contained classroom. They have significant medical conditions. A huge majority is from that population. And so we did have a small percentage of students that we worked really closely with transportation. They were great about sending the Suburban out to pick up the students. If they were, they're bouncing from Motel 6 or to a friend's house or whatever, they would go and pick them up. They've been wonderful, but some of the attendants couldn't be helped if the child was seizing all night. Of course, you don't want the mom to bring them, and medical appointments, some of them were hospitalized, surgeries. We have all of that documentation that we make sure that we keep on file for the students. And with the parent liaison, we have, with our campus, I know I'm gonna go over, with our campus, we set weekly attendance goals, and I announce them in the mornings every week. We celebrate. One class wins if they have the highest attendance for the grade level. Every 6 weeks at Hooray Day, we celebrate who has the highest attendance. They get a trophy. We dance. We have a great time. We have an attendance committee where the parent liaison is partnered and coupled with one of my administrators, and they meet as needed. So it could be every single week, or it could be, you know, on a monthly basis, just whatever the need is. But we run those weekly attendance reports, and I sign those weekly letters that go home. Okay, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions. We have decreased in our in-school suspensions. One of the things that I can say about the in-school suspensions is some of our students, sometimes we have to figure out a safety plan, and so the best way that I can say is they can't, it's really, we do not want to remove the kids. We want them to be in the classroom. Some of the students that we have to put in a different classroom and coded ISS is because it's a significant safety issue for the other kids. We have focused support. We have a lot of students that have emotional, social needs, and we work with them and we get them back in the classroom. It is only if it is absolutely necessary do we pull them out, and that's the same with the 14 out-of-school suspensions. I do think with the emergent tree, with our Tier 1 framework and the Be Safe, Respectful, Responsible, we have goals that we set as a campus. We have individual goals that we set as in the classroom. We celebrate those goals. With the Tier 2, that's where we've seen the biggest impact, because we have kids that we're meeting on daily behavior report card, the DBRC. They have a check-in, check-out similar to what the Focus program provides for students with emotional disturbances or other health impairments. But then the social skills, the impact that the social skills make on the kids is tremendous, and we look forward to implementing the Tier 3 this year, which we think will help. The campus emphasis, we will continue with the balanced literacy. We are very grateful that TLA will be providing professional development and new resources for Fontes and Pinnell and balanced literacy, and that the instructional coaches will continue to support the efforts in implementing balanced literacy 2nd through 5th grade. We will also be incorporating the AVID Wicker strategies, which is going to have a huge impact on reading and writing across the curriculum. We are the dual language campus for Crockett, Travis, and Hernandez. And so we have a huge support system in place to make sure that we are not only supporting our Ls, but we're supporting our monolingual English students. And again, we're very grateful for Emergent Tree, and as we're implementing the Tier 3 system, we do think we'll see a decrease in our ISS and OSS.
Questions? You were very fast. On the 14 of out-of-school suspensions, were most of these your focus students, or?
One student has most of those, and it was a safety issue. The child ended up needing to be homebound until some medical and some outside services. It was a safety concern in the house and at school, and so we tried everything possible before that, and sometimes it was just to make a safety plan and make sure that we could get all of the wraparound services people in there to meet with us and come up with a new plan. The other ones, yes, it's for our students before being identified that may have not had access to SHIBE or some other services, and then once that's in place, you see tremendous change. So I think it's, you know, all the different supports that finally are in place, and then we see that no more is it needed for them to be removed for a long period of time.
How many of the kids at Hernandez are in the Focus program?
19
Across all grades?
across all grades.
Thanks.
How does that compare to the other elementary schools?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Tammy would probably have that information.
You have another?
I have the ACL program also, and last year we had 5 classrooms, and it was 40 at one point in time and 39, and so those are kids with, you know, it could be autism or significant behaviors or multiple disabilities or mobility disabilities, significant health impairments, some things that they're on an alternative curriculum, and so that in itself can sometimes
That
need a
also
lot of
affects your
support.
numbers.
Right.
But they're in separate classrooms.
Self-contained.
No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
She ran through her presentation. She was good.
Good evening, Board President, Board of Trustees, and Mr. Cardona. I am Karen McGowan. I'm the principal of Mendus Elementary. This is Lizette Rodriguez, and she is our assistant principal. And so we're gonna just share a few celebrations with you tonight and give you a little hint of what our plan is for this next school year. Like all campuses across the district, of course, we're committed to the core commitments, and every decision we make are centered around those commitments. The first data slide that you'll see is with our third graders, and there are several celebrations we want to acknowledge. And one of those, if you look all the way to the right, is that our students that are limited English proficient scored 80% approach grade level. So we're very proud of them. It also reflects with our third graders, 75% approached grade level. And one of the things we see with that is that team of teachers really did a great job of analyzing the data after we gave common assessments, so they could dig deep and see kind of the teaks that the kids were missing and work with them in small groups. Then also, another celebration there is with our special ed students, because 42% of them approached grade level, and that took a lot of work. With fourth grade, the celebrations would center around an increase in math from 62 to 68%, and also in writing from 51 to 59%. And above that, when we looked at fourth grade reading for the MEETS standard, we actually saw an increase there from 34 to 41%, and our kids that mastered grade level actually doubled. So we went from 12% to 24%, so we were excited for those kids. Again, when you look at our LET population, we saw that those kids did well. 71% approached grade level. And when you look at math, 80% approached grade level, and that was up from 44% the previous year. And when we look at fourth grade reading, they were at 39% from the previous year for students. Fifth grade, when you just scan across, you can see that our fifth graders increased from 2017 to 2018. One of the things we also saw in math was at the end of the summer, we had, I think it was five kids that actually passed in summer school, which doesn't happen real often. So that percentage rate actually went up to 86%, even though we know it doesn't count in the accountability system. When we look at our meets for fifth grade, we increased 10 percentage points in reading from 27 to 37, and in math, 15 percentage points from 24 to 39. So we were proud of our fifth graders. Again, when we look at our limited English proficient students, they increased from 33% to 85, and in writing from 17%, not writing, in science from 17% to 59%. So we saw some good increases there. One of the things that we were really proud of is that when we looked at our kids in fifth grade on the first administration of the test, we only had 10 kids that didn't meet approaches in both tests. So out of the 90, 80 kids passed at least one or more, of the assessment. So we were real proud of that. And also of those 10 kids, 5 of them received special education services. So we were real proud of our fifth grade students. When we looked at attendance, if you look historically, we are usually about 96%. But this past year, like everybody else has talked about, feel like the flu really hit us. But we also, in looking at the data, we found about 10 to 13 families that chronic attendance is an issue. So those are the families we've targeted, not targeted, but we've chosen to really use our parent liaison to work with them when school starts. Lizette and I did attend we did attend the E3 Alliance Summit today, and one of the things that they said was that within the first 20 days, a kid determines their pattern of attendance. And so, like Crockett, we're gonna focus on those first 20 days and having teachers make contact with a parent of any child that misses school within the first 20 days of school. We have a great mentoring program, and our counselor in the past has always done lunch groups with our kids, and so that does help us with attendance. For social emotional support, we want to just keep doing what we're doing because it's working for our kiddos. We have embraced emergent tree. The teachers have been, trained in Tier 1 and Tier 2. One of the things we want to focus on is doing a better job of the check-in and check-out process when kids are on the daily behavior report cards. That's something where we want to make sure that we've assigned consistent staff to those students. So they have a consistent person that is meeting with them in the morning and kind of checking on them during the day. Okay. Campus initiatives. Okay. We are going to utilize the total school cluster grouping. That's something new this year. And that was brought to us from our GT director, Debbie Smith. And what this will do is it's a way to assign students into classrooms. And so it's going to reduce the range of ability levels in the classroom so that a teacher can really focus on differentiating for the group of kids she has in her room. We're going to implement AVID, like the other elementaries. We are going to focus on the writing piece as far as note-taking and on organization. So all grade levels will use the notebooks to organize their materials and as a means of communicating with parents. One thing we started this year is our breakfast buddies. And that's with 2nd through 5th grade students. And every student is assigned to a staff member, and it's not their homeroom teacher. So in the mornings, when we dismiss kids from their holding places, they go to their breakfast buddy, and the breakfast buddy meets with them about attendance, grades, what's happening at home, do you have supplies that you need? And so that's something that takes place 3 days a week. Then we're going to incorporate things we learned from ISD. And thank you very much for allowing us to go to the ISD conference. The teachers that went are going to implement some of the strategies they learned, and then they're going to share those with their team through internal labs. And then we're hoping, or the expectation is, that the teachers at their grade level will then implement those strategies as well. And last, we're going to implement SLOs with all the teaching staff, as is everybody else. But we're going to use our coaches to really work with teachers to monitor the progress that the kids are making on the SLOs that they developed. So it's a busy year, but we really look forward to a lot of successes. So do you have any questions?
You have a really low in-school suspension number, and you said you're just going to keep on doing what you're doing.
Right.
Is that having to do with your daily behavior report cards?
Well, that's part of the emergent tree for kids that are on Tier 2 behaviors. What we do for Tier 1 is just, we have our character counts assemblies. We do recognitions where kids are getting green tickets for behavior. We have the teachers set classroom expectations, and then when they meet them, the kids get to do some kind of reward. We've rewarded kids with cartoon room during lunch, so they can eat lunch and watch cartoons. So a lot of different things like that.
Anyone else? Ms. Hanson?
I just want to really commend you for all, you and your staff, for all the hard work on those test scores. It really shows
An increase.
intention.
They're not where we want them, but,
Oh,
but
well.
we're moving in the right direction, and
Right.
that's what we hope.
Being very successful with the LEP.
With all students.
Well, with all students, but the LEP really showed well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As Mr. Massini's coming up, you've heard the principals, several people mention E3 Alliance in attendance. And just as a reminder, probably back in January, February, we rolled out the Bright Bites crisis early warning system, so it kind of aligns perfectly. Our system is first 30 days, but they can still log on and get the data, so I think we're kind of streamlining our systems to get earlier interventions.
Good evening, President Cantu, Superintendent Cardona, Board of Trustees. Thank you for this opportunity to present our data from Travis Elementary. We are the proud administrators from Travis. I'm Scott Massini, your new principal at Travis, and Ms. De La Cruz, our assistant principal. One of the things that attracted me to actually, I would say the main thing that attracted me to San Marcos was your core commitments, and the work you all did in creating these core commitments allows us as administrators to really focus in on what this district stands for and who we are, and we're about all kids. The elimination of the achievement gaps and racial equity is a core value of mine, and it'll be something that we really tackle at Travis. I'm going to do this a little bit in reverse order. We're going to go to 5th grade first. Going to 5th grade, we showed, especially with our cohort score, which is why I wanted to start with 5th grade, our cohort showed growth going from 57% to 70%. We did take a dip in the overall score from 75 to 70. But again, in reading, but in math, after that third attempt, we also the cohort score went from 57 to 88%. And the reason I wanted to amplify 5th grade is the departmentalization that they did. We focused in on our teachers who teach reading the best are teaching reading. Our teachers that are teaching math the best are teaching math. So we're going to transition that to 4th grade as well this year. But keeping it on 5th grade, again, you can see our LEP scores. We had 86% at approaches. The scores that I really want to focus in on in 5th grade, though, is our special ed students. Because my question to our 5th grade team in our school is how are we providing access to all our kids? How are we providing access to the general education curriculum for our special ed students? And again, as you said, Mr. McLaughlin, it's about getting kids to meeting standard, and it's about all kids getting there. Moving to 4th grade, we were at 57% in 2017. We went up in an overall score in reading, and also with the cohort score, we went up 2%. However, those are minimal gains. They're gains nonetheless. They're minimal gains, but we really, again, we want to amplify what we were doing and look at the practices that our 5th grade team did. And so we took our teachers that were strong in reading content, and we're departmentalizing this year for the first time in 4th grade. We have excellent writing teachers in 4th grade that will be teaching that content. But again, looking at our special ed scores, our students who are receiving special ed services, again, my question is how are we getting them access to the general education setting? 3rd grade, moving on to third grade, we took a dip from 61% to 52 in reading, and 58 in math. We went up 3%. But again, and our LEP scores were at 29% and for reading and 35% for math. Ms. De La Cruz is going to take us a little bit through the attendance and social emotional. But before we get to attendance, I think we also have to tip our hat to 95% of our kids are coming on a daily basis, and we don't want kids coming to school when they're sick either. We don't want that to compound itself. So not that we don't want to improve in that area of attendance, but I tip my hat to all of you for those strong attendance results.
Like everyone else, we also had the flu hit us this year. It was a pretty rough year for that. It started early and seemed forever. So, but it comes around, and we just kind of roll with the punches on that and try to get our kids there as much as possible. A couple of attendance goals that we have in place. We like to, what we noticed, I think more so than chronic absenteeism, more so is tardiness. And so we really focused on our kiddos getting to school on time. We have a partnership that our social work intern implemented last spring that we're going to continue, which was great. It was a daily morning check-in with our kids who are chronically absent and tardy. They had a little sticker folder. They came and checked in every morning. When they got their stickers for the week, 5 stickers, you were there Monday through Friday. On Friday, we had a partnership with Krispy Kreme. Went and picked up some donuts. You got a donut Friday morning when you were, showed up for the whole week. So it's amazing what people do for donuts. So it was nice to see them coming in every morning, and it was a great community partnership that we had with Krispy Kreme that we're going to continue via our parent liaison, and also, our social work interns as they continue to work through. That was a great new program for us. We will also love our parent liaison full time. We feel like we couldn't do life without Connie. She's fabulous and does amazing things to help our families. So we will be increasing our home visits by the parent liaison and either Mr. Messini or myself to go to the homes and help those families feel welcome and see what assistance we can provide them to get their kiddos at school on a regular basis. We do notice that those patterns do come in families, and so we really do want to try to increase their attendance in that way and help them and support them in any way that we can. As far as our social emotional support, we have seen a significant decrease in our in-school and out-of-school suspensions. We did see a rather large increase in 16-17. That was unfortunately attributed to a small number of students, but we did what we could to keep those students in class as much as possible. Again, like others have stated, if it's a safety issue, we want to make sure that we're keeping all of our students safe. So that is our only time that we would be suspending, is if it's for a safety concern. We did have a couple of DAP placements. One this last year in 2017-18, that was due to it was a mandatory placement based on a choice that someone had something unsafe at school. So the one prior to that was attributed to a couple of friends that we had worked really hard to try to keep on track. Our goals are to increase our 3-to-1 acknowledgements campus-wide, 3 positives to 1 redirection. We have a visual in place that we're working on for our texts and tickets that our students receive, so that each class works on a class goal. They fill up a marble jar with 100, and every time they fill up their marble jar, we're going to have a visual for that so that the students can see that. We are also going to increase our social skills lessons with our Tier 3 students. We're super excited about Emergent Tree at Tier 3. We love all of it, but we're super excited to implement the Tier 3 this year with a few friends that need that. And we use a think sheet as a reframing for students with their behavior, and we're going to, and we would do that when they would need to come see us in the office, but we're going to move that into the classrooms a little bit as well, so the teachers have the opportunity to have that conversation with their kiddos about reframing their behavior choices and making sure they're being safe, respectful, and responsible. And then our emphasis.
So first and foremost, we are going to build a foundation of literacy at Travis. y'all have invested a lot of money in Fontes and Pinnell for the K-1 classrooms, and we will implement that with fidelity. It's a program that really allows the students to think critically through authentic text, think, read, and write. And I think it'll be very valuable getting all our kids on grade level at the end of kindergarten and all our kids on grade level for reading at the end of first grade. Sets them up for really good success in the intermediate grades. We're also, in conjunction with that, provide intense coaching support to grades kindergarten and first grade to support the rollout of the FMP classroom. I will personally be there shoulder to shoulder with the coach and those two grade levels to roll this out. I had experience with FMP back in Minnesota that I've seen this work, especially when you tie it to the continuum of literacy, which we will also be applying to our upper grades as well. I think the crucial piece to what we will do next year is enhance the PLC structure at Travis. We are going to move towards a full data teams process for K-5 classrooms with the focus on student learning objectives, but around literacy. And we will be developing SMART goals. We will be developing action plans within each grade level to target what we need to teach, and we're going to analyze where students are at and where we need to go. And that throws you off. So the other thing we want to do is increase student voice with PBIS emergency plans. Any way we can, we need to amplify student voice in our students can really tell us how to teach, and really how to teach them. But we need to really amplify student voice and listen to our kids. Transform Travis into a trauma-sensitive learning environment. Really want to make sure we, as a campus, are looking at behavior as a symptom versus a choice. We're no longer looking at behavior as this kid is choosing to do this, but truly finding that below the line information and digging into why are we doing what we're doing, and then it becomes about teaching. And then, as others have said, we're going to be AVID school-wide with a real strong college emphasis. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, so I was alarmed at the third grade reading data, particularly the first time I saw it, and so I think that tracks back to what you're doing in K and first, and but what specifically do you do to get that group on track? Because if they're not approaching third grade reading standard, their chances of writing in fourth grade they've got to be really small. I don't know the data on it, but it doesn't make sense that it would be very far above zero. So what do you do about the kids that have already been through third grade?
100%, which is why we want to build that foundation in K-1, as you were saying. But with our third grade team, we really want to emphasize the literacy continuum and how it ties to TEKS. And we need to really dive into the student learning objectives and really track our kids and see where they're at and see what they need to learn to get to the next level, because it's 100% about growth. Growth leads to proficiency, and as much as I agree with you that we need to get our kids to meets, if we can show accelerated growth with all our kids, starting with our low third graders, we can set them up for success at Goodnight and Miller. It's about that growth. We need to accelerate that growth, and they may not hit proficiency at Travis, but they will hit proficiency at Goodnight and Miller if we're doing the right things at Travis.
And we're also hoping that feeling that the departmentalizing in fourth grade this year will put that emphasis and those really strong, solid teachers at those core subject areas with those kiddos to fill those gaps that they are bringing from third grade to fourth grade and help accelerate their learning in that regard.
Thanks.
Question on trauma-sensitive learning environment. Is that something you're going to teach them, or is that a program that you're buying to use with your teachers?
It's nothing we're gonna buy. It's all about mindset. It's 100% about mindset, and it's working in conjunction with our school counselor, our administrative team, and truly changing the mindset through professional development that we provide our staff.
Thank you. Ms. Hanson?
I just want to thank you, Mr. Massini, for owning these scores and coming up with your whole campus as a plan for making improvements.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's hard to report on somebody else's
Yes, that's
administration. Thank you very much. We're gonna, right?
I'm just thinking to myself.
Well, I mean, he's brand new. So, I mean, everybody's asking for a break. We're gonna take about a 5 to 10 minute break. I need to go pee.
You guys didn't make excuses. You didn't say it. Neither did That's plenty.
You're ready.
Board President, board members, superintendent, good evening. I'm Jennifer Gonzalez. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to lower this. I am the proud principal of Bonham Pre-K. We have quite an exciting year planned out, so we'll go through our vision for the year. Of course, we start with the core commitments. Like all of my colleagues, this gives us a bridge work for everything that we do. I don't have the same kind of data to share after this that all my colleagues do, but I do, Ms. Hernsberger was nice enough to kind of break it down. This past year was the first year that our full-day pre-K students were in 3rd grade taking the STAR assessment. So I did ask her to compare our Bonham students, so out of 250 Bonham students, to other students who did not attend pre-K but were left homeless or economically disadvantaged. So there were 220 of those students. So in math, our Bonham students were 4% more likely to pass, scoring at a 60% passing rate. And the students that did not attend Bonham scored a 56% passing rate. Whereas in reading, our students scored a 58%, so they were 4% less likely to pass than the other students who scored 62% passing. So looking at this data, it kind of gives us a framework of where we're going. Not as comparable because we're in a whole new school now. Those students did not attend. They were in a full day, but they did not attend the new school. And we also have different models. But it kind of gives us something to look at, and for the future, just continuing to look at that data of our students who are going and taking the STAR test now. So for academics, our focus is going to be on social emotional learning with our conscious discipline and our emergent tree. Language development and literacy with Fontes and Pinnell. We are so excited that pre-K was included in this because really building that foundation, starting with pre-K, and then they're going to kindergarten and first grade, continuing with the Fontes and Pinnell is going to help so much. A really strong focus on writing. This was one of my favorite pictures. I went through all of the previous year's pictures that I found on Ms. Garza's old drive. And one of the students in pre-K wrote, "I have a dream. My dream for the world is that there be more brisket." So Melody is one of my favorite kids ever because I have that dream too. Our attendance, pre-K is always has the worst attendance in the state. That is the year that a lot of our students, it's their first time in a school setting, a daycare setting, any kind of setting. I know when my daughter attended Bonham, she had 13 absences, and I was mortified as an assistant principal with my daughter having 13 absences. But a lot of it is due to illness. I know Mr. McLaughlin did ask about that. It is due to illness. We have reached out. My attendance clerk, my registrar, is really good about reaching out to all of the parents, and so all of ours are mostly due to illness. We have put some things in place in the school. The students no longer drink from the water fountains. They have little paper cups that they use from those to try to keep their mouths, because 4-year-olds don't know your mouth does not go on the water fountain. So those cups have helped. Hand washing procedures, just promoting all of that, is we're trying to really, really hone in on good health habits. So our plan of action, our goal is to get above 94% attendance for the year. So we'll have perfect attendance initiatives, weekly, monthly, yearly. We're really going to strive to get some community donations. So previous campuses I've been at, we've gotten bikes from the Lions Club, different things like that. And I like to make the attendance visible for the kids. So having those attendance boards, attendance celebrations in the hallways is really going to help for our students. Our parent liaison is going to reach out and conference with families about attendance for our chronic attendance students, and also just calling every day to make sure that our students are safe and where they're supposed to be. We do have a plan in place where our teachers call the second day, but I'd like for our parent liaison to reach out that first day. And then administration having conferences with parents about the chronic attendance issues as well. So for community outreach, that's one of our big focuses. We want parents and community in our school. Texas State is in there. I'm so excited that we have so many different partnerships with Texas State going on. But if you guys, I know President Cantu, you come with the United Way, any outreach that we can get for support for our students and staff. And then revisit our family engagement plan. We want to offer ESL classes for parents, our family nights, and of course we do host a food bank weekly. This is our big one for the year. So this started last year with our Play and Inquiry. We have had the Play and Inquiry camp during the summer, partnership with Texas State, but building it into our master schedule happened last year. And so for this first semester, we're really going to focus on the Play and Inquiry. It's built into our master schedule for an hour a day. And going into second semester, we want to make that hour longer, 2-3 hours. We really have found that play is how our 4-year-olds learn. They learn through play. In fact, our quote for the year is "Play is serious learning," because it is for our students. So keeping up with that Play and Inquiry partnership with Texas State is really, really the direction that we're wanting to go. That's all I have. So thank you. Questions?
I had a question about that data you read. It wasn't in the
Yes,
packet,
I
so-
apologize. I just got it this
that's okay.
afternoon.
But did I hear you right that the students who went to the full-day pre-K program and were in 3rd grade this past year had scored 4 points lower on the reading STAR,
That's correct. They did
Okay.
score 4 points lower, and that's why we're really going to hone in on that early literacy with the Fontes and Pinnell program, because there wasn't a plan in place. We just went off of the guidelines before. So having the specific mapped out phonics program is really going to help our students.
And you selected the comparison group. You read it kind of fast. I want to make sure I understood. Well, who was the comparison group?
Our comparison group are limited English proficiency students in San Marcos, our homeless, and our economically disadvantaged students.
Because you thought that was like a
It's
kind of a
comparison.
mirror of what you're working with. Yes.
So for our students that qualify for pre-K, that's the criteria that they need to qualify.
That's kind of depressing.
That's sad.
I mean, if we're going to invest this many millions of dollars, we need to see that they're getting to third grade and doing better, right? So I would be eager to see that number next year, and maybe over time, we'll either see improvement or reevaluate.
Yes.
Ms. Costilla?
Following on Mr. McLaughlin, then those pre-K students would be in various elementary schools, is that correct? Yeah, they would not just be in one campus, they would be in various elementary schools. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Cardona and everybody here. I am Rose Pearson. I am the principal at Goodnight Middle School, and this is Mrs. Beth Nash. She's the assistant principal, and she'll be helping me out here. All right, so we will start with the core commitments, as we've started for everyone else. I would like to say that we at Goodnight Middle School really use these as our guide for our campus needs assessment that we work on as a leadership team. And we have really reaped the rewards of making sure that's implemented into our campus improvement plan. And there is lots of teacher involvement and ownership and voice. Also, we have a parent on that team as well as a district person on that team. And it's really focused us on having a very welcoming environment for our families and our community and increasing in that area. So I just wanted to really point that out. I love these core commitments, and thank you so much for working on them. So we have our 6th grade data here. So I'd like to start off with our math. We did see a small increase from the cohort to the 2018 approaches. So we are closing gaps. If you look over at our SPED and our LEP percentages, we're very proud of that. They're both above 50% and really feel like we're making some great gains there. We did see a slight decline in reading, but we feel very confident that we can duplicate the gains we saw in math with the things we have planned this school year. We think that a lot of what we're doing with our special education teachers and the power of 2, really focusing on the content area with the special education teachers is really helping us there. And then we'll move on over to our 7th grade STAR data. I'd like to start with our 7th grade reading. You will see that there was an increase there from the cohort. And we did, we feel like we're closing the gaps there. We do want to really push the meets and the masters. We do have springboard curriculum that's coming in to address that. And we did feel like we had an increase in our LEP percentage in the reading as well. The math, there is a slight decrease, but that's a little misleading because we had an increase in students taking algebra in 7th grade. We're very proud of that initiative. We've been pushing that over the last few years. So we had 27. The previous year, we went up to 52, and this school year, we're going up to 80 students in 8th grade. So we're very proud to be increasing the number of rigorous classes for our 7th graders and giving them that opportunity to take algebra. And writing, we have some significant gaps. It's a real focus for the campus. We're very proud that we have AVID and that we are going to push Wicker. And so we are
going to really make sure that we're using cross-curricular writing and that writing is occurring in all content areas, and we have some plans in place for that. I would like to point out that we did have all of our SPED students, like -4 students out of the 40, I believe, that took it, 43, take it online. And so we're also going to revisit that as well and make sure that we're not missing something there, just really dig in deep into that writing data. We move over to 8th grade. We're really celebrating 8th grade reading and math. We're very proud of the cohort's growth in reading from 71 to 85%. We did see a 2% growth in the meets as well. So we're very proud of that. The percentage in our SPED and our LEP students as well. We feel like we're closing the gaps and really working very well with those groups. Not there yet, have a lot of work to do still, but being very purposeful and real intentional on what we are doing. And then we go on to 8th grade math. So we did see a increase in the cohort, and that is with an increased number of students in algebra, so that makes us equally proud that although we went from 70 on the cohort to 77, 117 of those students did not take the 8th grade math because they took the algebra into course. So we still saw an increase even with our students that were taking the more rigorous class out of that data. I hope that makes sense, the way I'm explaining it. And then our 8th grade, science and our history, we are not where we want to be. We want to make sure that we are really working on the vertical alignment and the hands-on labs, utilizing our STEM scope in the real-world application. We did see in history an increase in our SPED students from the previous year to 22%, so we are happy about that, but definitely really need to hone in with ELA and with science. We are doing some cross-curricular support with our ELA classes, and those teachers will be working very closely together to support each other, especially with the content. We know it's a lot of reading, and then also with Wicker and with the AVID strategies. That's going to really help quite a bit. And then we go on to our algebra end of course, and we're really proud of our algebra scores because, as you can see, we went from 132 students the previous year to 169, so we're really increasing opportunities for our students, and we only saw a very slight decrease, and our meets percentage increased and our masters, and I think with that springboard curriculum, we're going to see that even increase in the right direction there, and then our SPED and our LEP students at 100%, and moving towards this year with giving the opportunity of all 8th graders to take algebra, I really feel like we're going to continue in that trend because we have some very strong teachers and strong instructional supports in place. I love that we're opening doors for our students and opportunities. There's so much data that supports if we open those doors to them now that they'll take that more rigorous coursework at the high school. We'll go on to attendance. We had 94.6%. We want to increase that by a percentage point. The flu did hit us also, so there was several students who were out, as described earlier, twice with the flu, and so it did hurt. But we do monitor very closely. This year, our attendance committee is going to include our parent liaison and our attendance clerk, our admin, and teachers as well. It's one of the committees on the campus that will meet weekly, and we will analyze the data. And then also, as Mr. Cardona was talking about Bright Bites, that's that predictive analysis, so we really get to look at that and start early. And I would like to highlight that our attendance work starts in the summer. Now we analyze the data from the previous year. We send out letters to families, and we meet with families before school even starts, and we do it in a very safe way. They know that it's a proactive way. They know that it's for us to assist them in what they need and that it's not judgmental. And so I really love that we do that, and it's actually really benefited us over the years. And then, of course, our social-emotional counselor being on campus full-time and supporting those students. When we do have that information from the parents, we're able to support them in the needs that they have. And then just our incentives all around. We have Breakfast of Champions and other things going on during the year that highlights our students that are having the good attendance and encourages them to be at school. We also had the teachers post it on their dry erase board. This was an idea that was actually shared by Mr. Barton that the high school was doing, and it really worked. So the teachers really challenged the kids to increase the percentage each week. And then we're on to the next slide, the social-emotional support. As you can see over the years, our in-school suspension has decreased, and we are very proud of that because we know that students need to be in class to learn. Our teachers are really behind that also, and we are very, again, intentional on how we decide whether a student's going to go to in-school suspension, and we want to see that number drop even more, to be quite honest with you, this year. Our out-of-school suspensions and our DAPs are kind of tied together because typically a student would have 3 days of out-of-school suspension before a DAEP placement, and all of our DAEP placements were mandatory except for 2 placements, meaning that I didn't have a choice. They had to go. So we do have a choice once they get there for them to earn their time and get back as quickly, and that is always our goal, for them to be back with us just as quickly as they possibly can. And so we will increase our school-wide recognition with Tier 1 and Tier 2. We're very proud of the work we're doing with Emergent Tree. Our teachers make positive phone calls home. We have clear, wide expectations school-wide that our teachers teach to all of our students. We take nothing for granted. And we teach social lessons to our students during advisory. We also teach bully-proof lessons during advisory. And we have the daily behavior report card to be proactive with our students. They get mentors on campus. Our students respond very well, so well that sometimes some of the kids put themselves on a DVRC because they know that it works. So we're very proud with that, of the work we're doing there. And then our campus emphasis, so instructionally and socio-emotional, our teachers and I and all of my admin team know that we are a wraparound school, and when we say it, we mean it. So that means that we're going to support kids all the way around instructionally and socio-emotionally, because if they can not be comfortable learning, then the learning's not going to occur. So we train our teachers. We have some upcoming training on mental health first aid. We're working with Gear Up. We have a half-day training on classroom management and systems. We have a mentor program we're starting with Texas State and other community partnership through the Gear Up. We have our socio-emotional counselor. We focus on growth mindset, and it is an expectation that everyone does goal setting in all content and elective areas, and it is monitored, and it really shows ownership to the students. And so while our data may not have everything in there that, the scores where we want them to be, we do see individual student growth, and we will continue to focus on that individual student growth, and everything else will fall in place. And our kids love being at Goodnight, and we love Goodnight. Thank you so much. What questions can I answer for you?
Ms. Costilla?
Thank you for the report, Ms. Pearson. This is really a good report. Question on your STAR Algebra 1. Was that all 8th graders or just some that had signed up for that?
So this past year it was 161, I believe, and so it was a lot of our students that took pre-AP in 7th grade, so it was not all of our 8th graders, but it was almost over a third of our students. We had about 340 8th graders, but of those we also had about 30 of them in geometry, because if they take algebra in 7th grade, then they take geometry.
I just wanted to commend you because out of that number, you have more than half.
Yeah, so we're very proud of that. Yes, ma'am.
The meets rather than in the approaches. And I also wanted to comment on your emotional support, social emotional and plan of action. You mentioned here increased positive phone calls home.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think that's real good. I think, a lot of parents, sometimes I hear parents always say they always call me when something bad has happened at home. And I never hear from them when something happens good at home. So good, I like to see that.
And I didn't put on there that we're going to do positive, what do they call them, positive referrals. This was also something else Mr. Barton's pretty awesome, brought to our attention. And so we are going to do that as well, because then that gives admin an opportunity to also call. We do, but we'll be more purposeful with it.
It's just that I hear that from parents, that basically will say a comment and say, they're always ready to call me when something bad happens. But we never hear from them when something good happens. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Couple questions. I saved this question for you, Ms. Pearson, because I've known you the longest. And so you'll indulge me. But on the cohort scores that I consistently see brought up, especially when the cohort improves, are those tests normed to each other, or are there different pass rates? And like, for instance, it looks like the 7th grade test is just harder than the 8th grade test, and the numbers are just consistently lower. And then in 8th grade, the numbers are higher. And if you take the 8th grade cohort and compare it to when they took that 7th grade test, it's always going to show growth, right? Because the test is different, right?
Well, that is true, but I'm not going to speak as eloquently as probably Mrs. Hernsberg could because she studied it very deeply, but that STAR with TA, they have purposely created the STAR test from each grade level to show the rigor. And so, yes, you're right, it may be a few less questions they have to get correct to pass, but they have normed it that way. Now, Ms. Hernsberg, am I explaining that correctly? You probably could do it a little better than me.
I'll catch,
So-
well, I think we get to ask her questions on the 20th, or that group, so I'll save it. I just wanted to introduce that idea because I was noticing it. And the second thing I was noticing is comparing the two middle schools, which is inevitable, right? Goodnight had more, like, if I'm going to generalize, a higher number of approaches, right, across most of the tests, but a lower numbers of meets and masters. Do you have an explanation for that, or an idea of how, you could get those meets and masters more in line with your
I
compatriots?
have an idea of how we can get it more aligned, but we're at about 83% economically disadvantaged, and students that come from poverty lack opportunities, and we feel them there. When they're there, we do everything in our power to work with them. But vocabulary, writing, Mr. Cardona said they write like they talk, right? And I'm like, yeah, they really do. So we've got some more. We've got work to do, but we're not afraid of hard work and pulling up our sleeves. We're going to do it, and then also maintaining that really high level of expectations and making sure that we are our instruction is at that level so that we keep pushing upward in that meets and that master's percentage.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One observation I had was the attendance has gone down. In the last 2 years, it's just consistently going down from 97 to 95, and now y'all are at 94.
It's trended downwards in the district over the last 2 years. We were actually the highest for the secondary campuses, but it has trended downwards overall. And the only thing that when we look at the data across the board, we do have the kids who are the chronic ones, and we know who those kids are, but we really had a number of kids out with illnesses that were bringing doctor's notes, just as everybody else has explained. That really has just been true. I don't know if it's the flu and what else it is, but they're bringing excuses and they really are sick.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, good evening, Board, and Mr. Cardona, Superintendent. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you data from Miller Middle School. Got Ms. Villanueva that will be my technical assistant. Again, just like every other campus, we do have our core commitments up here, and we have actually aligned our vision on our campus with our core commitments, and what we've done this year is actually obviously looking at data and needing to refocus our instructional views that align with our vision and the core commitments as well. So moving forward, we'll look at 6th grade, and in our 6th grade data, we noticed that there are some dips, and actually to address Mr. McLaughlin's question to Ms. Pearson, this is the only grade level where we did not see a growth in the meets and masters. They were within single-digit percentage points from each other. Some of that could be to transitioning or what have you. One area of growth I would like to talk about is, and we'd like to celebrate, is when we look at 6th grade math at 59% in our LEP. Again, not where we want to be, but in this group here, our LEP students seem to outperform they are outperforming our SPED students. And again, we have plans in place to make sure that we specifically support these students throughout the day, and also the teachers as well. And you'll see that later on in the presentation, 7th grade. Okay. In 7th grade, here's where we start seeing a trend. Our 7th grade math scores tend to follow. Again, we do have students that you would see in that cohort that are taken to algebra. But when you look at our 7th grade reading and 7th grade writing, there is a small dip in one area, but yet there is an increase in another. We do have pluses. We do have growth in our meets and masters in our reading and writing. Again, math is an area of concern that we are going to take care of and do have a plan for, as well as the other two groups. When we get to our 8th grade scores, this is where, as I started looking at data and sharing it with my coaches and my admin team, beginning to celebrate, we see growth in basically all areas. In our approaches, we see growth in our meets and masters. We do see growth in our SPED and LEP areas. Again, not where we want them to be, but they are trending upwards. Areas of celebration for us. The only place we did not grow is masters with the math, but we were 2 percentage points off, I believe, from last year. So, but everything else, we in some areas we did see double-digit growth. Okay, next slide. Our algebra scores, you know, holding pretty true. 97%, 54 in the meets. One of the areas here that we're really going to focus on is increasing the masters at 19%. So we would like to get that considerably higher. And again, our LEP and SPED students are meeting the mark there in Algebra 1. Okay. In our attendance has stayed pretty steady the last 3 years, give or take 2 to 4/10 of a percentage point. Our goal is to be at 95.5 or better. Very similar to Goodnight, and Ms. Pearson and I, we have conversation almost daily as we pick each other's brains, and this is something we've done. And we start in the summer, look at last year's, and we have a watch and an agreement according to the number of absences they accrued the year previous. And what we will begin to do is monitor these on a weekly basis, and also our non-identified students who we don't identify in the summer, but we start noticing that first month of school. We will expand our attendance team to include obviously the administration and registrar, but our parent liaison and the use of our social-emotional counselor as well. And they will all take different facets of this as we collaborate on a weekly basis and get to our areas and get those kiddos into the building. When we look at our social-emotional support and our discipline, our in-school suspension obviously in 2015-16 was rather high. We have, you know, that was my first year. We went in and rechanged some things. We saw a significant dip, and then they kind of balanced out. There's a 100 student, that doesn't necessarily mean 100 students. There's 100 points higher. Had an increase in students. Our philosophy remained the same. Our out-of-school suspension stayed relatively the same, and so did our DAEP placements. Our goal is to reduce the amount of ISS placements by 50%. By using that, and you'll see Champs up there, and we do use Emergent Tree and the Tier 1 and the Tier 2, and we have really good success with that. And what we're doing is that's the support for the student, and we have teacher meetings once a month that talk about those students. Champs is something that I'm going to provide for our teachers for their classroom structure, some ideas of relationship building, and to really begin to change the culture on the adult end of that. So now we've got obviously Champs for the adults, and then we'll continue the emergency with students. We want to limit our OSS assignments to mandatories, and again, like Ms. Pearson said, a lot of those were prior to DAEP placements. They would be on suspension. That will be new for this year, and we will house them in ISS with supports from teachers and our social-emotional. Okay, we can go ahead. Some of our campus emphasis. Super excited about AVID, one of the best conferences I've been to in I can't remember how long. I could have stayed there another 3 days. We're really excited about that. I've got a great team put together. We are going to run it campus-wide outside of those students that'll be actually in the AVID program. And we are focusing on culture and instruction as the two areas in AVID. SIM is our instructional model. Those are going to be on the front and back end where we build our lessons, and on the back end to segregate the data. We're going to use the AVID strategies as the instructional piece for our teachers and students. Providing professional development, we will have professional learning where I believe it's powerful for teachers to teach teachers. So we will have our special ed teachers going in and demonstrating certain techniques to use with varying students. Obviously, we will have AVID routines of the month and how it incorporates into some SIM stuff. And then the CTWP, that's our Central Texas Writing Project. I've got a team of teachers that are trained, and they'll continue to train on that with our secondary literacy program. We're going to put in and do more reading and writing across the board. We will also, again, like everyone else, have the student learning objective, which I think is going to be a very powerful tool. Excited to step into that venture with increasing the instruction and growth of our teachers. And down there with the student management, you will see champs. And another thing we're going to do is begin PM tutorials 3 days a week. And we're going to begin that about the 4th week of school. And begin to look at data very early and start to identify those students that are really in need of coming to some PM tutorials and closing those gaps. That's it, right?
Questions?
Questions?
Anybody? Thank you. Good job.
Good evening, Madam President, School Board Trustees, Mr. Cardona, Superintendent. My name is Yvette Velasquez. I am the Lamar Campus Principal. I'm doing my own clicking, sorry. The core commitments, as everyone has mentioned, are the driving force of every decision that we make on our campus and school district-wide as well. From what we've heard. My campus emphasis for the year is a 3-tiered approach that I feel will have some very positive byproducts. I want to start with motivation. I want to motivate my students to be in school through incentives, through attendance, our DBRC behavior points system that they use every day that's guided by Emergentry. I want to bring in community speakers and off-campus visits also to our students so that they can plan for their future and know what some of their options are, whether it's high school part-time jobs, after-school careers, possible trade opportunities. I want them to speak to community members, business owners that have started their chapters in the same way my students have and have been successful in their lives despite their shortcomings growing up and in their backgrounds. I want them to find purpose through service. I want them to start working with school fuel. I want them to work with other community action programs, Meals on Wheels, the food pantry. I want them to go out and provide service so that they know what that means to be contributors, positive contributors to our community, so that they can see that even though they're young and they've made some bad choices in the past, that's not really what's going to drive their future. When you have a lot of obstacles in your life and you're living day to day, it's hard to see the future. It's hard to plan for the future, and that's what I want my students to start thinking about the next day, the next week, the next month, the next semester. And so I know that in our program, it's very seat driven. Their seat time is important so that they can return to their home campus. And so I want to equip them as well as we can so that when they do return to their campus, they're making better choices because they know there are better options out there for them. Social emotional, thank you very much for our counselor. I plan to utilize her this year through targeted group sessions. She will be conducting the orientations when the students come in with their parents. And so she's going to do a quick assessment and questionnaire of what are some of the issues that they would like to target while they're with us. And so she'll develop group sessions with those students as well as one-on-one. The students, when they come to us, are already at a tier 2 through the emergency process, and so our goal is to avoid going into the tier 3. But she will be there to guide them so that they have social skills, they have group sessions, and they, through her guidance, can help make better choices and be more equipped to make better choices when they return to their home campus. And so we also hope to have transition meetings this year, which will be new. I spoke to the secondary principals today, and they've allowed for my social emotional counselor to visit with the students at least 3 times after they've returned to their home campus to do a check-in, so that they can talk about their progress, their choices, and their trying to avoid coming back to us. So I feel that if we build a positive relationship with the students at my campus, I guess their goal should be to not disappoint and come back. And so I hope that through having those follow-up meetings with them and transition meetings with them, that we can have a plan and have some goals in place that they may have not in the past worked on. And lastly, I think an educational or instructional approach is very important. In the past, the instructional model was almost 100% Edgenuity driven, which is our online curriculum. And so I want to implement this year instructor-led lessons. And so that way the students get one-on-one and direct instruction at their level by utilizing scope and sequences that they'll get from the middle schools and the high school, depending on where they're at. And also with the assistance of instructional coaches, they'll be able to understand more where they are, and so that they're not being dropped back into a classroom and they're completely lost. At that point, the natural outcome would be behavior disruption. So I'm hoping that by giving them more instruction that's one-on-one and that's on par with their lessons that's being taught in the classroom, they'll feel more comfortable returning to the classroom setting. We have on my campus daily debriefings with the teachers. We meet every day after school. We talk about the students, we talk about their mental health, we talk about their emotional health for the day, and we talk about their behavior and the decisions that they made. And we adjust our rosters if we have to as far as their classroom placements. And we talk about what's best for them, what's the next step for them, how many days do they have left, how can we make them be more successful. And so we do that on a daily basis. So those are our mini PLCs, and I hope to continue with those. And also make them more in-depth. Last year it was just something that I implemented very quickly when I came on board, but I want to also include more data analysis this year so that we have a more data-driven decision-making on a daily basis. I want to also open communication with the home campuses. Whenever we call because of attendance, we call every day, and we also know what's going on with our kids on a more personal level as well as academic. And so I hope to share that information with the home campuses so that when they return, they know the student is struggling with grief, the student is struggling with personal relationships at home. I think that one of the main things that our teachers and my staff know is that a lot of times the reason why they are on my campus has nothing to do with academics, has nothing to do with the schoolhouse. It has to do with everything happening outside the 4 walls of our school. So we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be empathetic to that, and we need to help them get some solutions and be equipped with better decision-making skills. And so that's what I hope to do for the kiddos. Looking at attendance for the spring of last semester, we were at 80.6%, which is a bit dismal. And so my goal is to increase daily attendance rate by 8%. and then increase another 8% the following year, which would take us to about 95%, which I think is my ultimate goal. But I think 8% is feasible and realistic. It's, I think, a good little increment of increase and growth, and I want to create a positive school culture that will promote being in attendance every day through incentives, like I mentioned earlier. And then also, we contact the home every day. Every day, if you're not there, we're calling home. I love the school status program. I've been texting parents, and so I would text, and they wouldn't respond to phone calls, but I would text, and 15 minutes later, the kids would show up, you know, shirts not tucked in, they need to borrow a belt, but they're there. And I get a response after they get there from the parents as, thank you, they're on their way. So I think the school status has really helped a lot. Also, my teachers make daily phone calls, at least 2, a positive and a challenge. And so I think that now having the ability to track that, it would be a good incentive for us to know that teachers are communicating with our kiddos. As far as the social emotional support, we had 83 total referrals in the spring. 14 were partial out-of-school suspensions, 27 were out-of-school suspensions, 3 were DAP placements. That's an additional placement to what they already had, and those were 2 drug-related and 1 assault. So they were mandatory placements. Recidivism rate right now is standing at 14%. My goal is to decrease that to at least 10% this upcoming school year. The kids, I think, are losing a lot of instructional time in their classroom, and I really, with all the wonderful incentives and programs and initiatives that all of the campuses are talking about this whole evening, I feel like my kids need to be there to you know, to grow, you know, and take advantage of those systems that are being put in place in the campuses. So my hope is that once they get here, that we equip them well enough so that they don't return. I want to implement a disciplinary level system to avoid extending placements, and that would be just basically like an after-school detention. And then also incentivize rewards that will elicit participation in growth and discipline in academics. So we have gym time, we have martial arts, we have yoga, we have Texas State Recreational Therapy. We're talking to Boys and Girls Club of Hays County. We're talking to a lot of outside organizations that can come in and help our kids with giving them some kind of incentive so that they do behave well and they do make better choices. Emergency has been a great resource, as well as Greater San Marcos Youth Council. We have mentors that come on a daily basis, and our students really attach themselves to positive adult interactions, and so that's something that we want to continue. And again, continue with the faculty and staff debriefings, and again, add data as one of the components to that. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Is the recidivism rate same year returns or any returns?
Same year.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Superintendent, I am so happy to be here and to be the last person on the agenda. I'm not so sure that I even have any more words to add to what's been said. I will tell you, when we started talking about doing this data coaching for you, I was sitting with my leadership team, many of them are here right now, and we were looking at all the different categories. And the one thing that came up is the fact that we needed to spark the heart of our kids. Because if we didn't spark the heart of our kids, that wasn't gonna make any difference, because we've tried so many things, and that to spark the heart was the only way that we were gonna get into their heads. Again, we support the core commitments. Not only do we support the core commitments, but we align ourselves with our students with our mission statements and our own student mission statements along with that. On our slides, what we've done is we've gone through and we have marked in green to show you some of the increases. The slides are not colored, they either stayed the same or there were decreases in those particular areas. In algebra, we had an 8% increase in approaches. Not exactly what we wanted, but it's a start. One of the things I think that made a big difference with this was the approach that Ms. Cooper and Ms. Smith took with the math department. They did a draft. They brought all the teachers in with all the kids and had the teachers commit to working with certain kids that were having difficulties. And so I think that that's the result of what you're seeing here. But many of our kids are coming with great deficits, and we cannot use that as an excuse. We have to increase them by working better and smarter with them. In biology, in the green, you can see the increases we had. We're using that 1% from 81 to 82%. You know, at first we're looking at that, we're like, gosh, do we even want to put 1%? And the answer is yes. Because when we sit here and we talk about every child, every day, then one kid makes a difference. So that 1% was important because I don't know whose child that is. It could have been mine. That 1% was significant. 5%, 7%, and then on the left we had a 10% increase. And I think that the LEP increase had a lot to do with the work that our ESL department did with coming over and really talking to the kids about what their goals were and helping understand what they needed and what they wanted. We're gonna follow that pattern next year, but instead of having the central office group come over, we're gonna do that on our own so that we can better work with our ESL students. Our US history, they did a fantastic job, 90% at 3%, 9% increase, 8% increase, and then a 3% increase with our students in left. English 1 and 2. Man, this one was hard for me. When we started looking at this, and I want you to understand that what we've done in every one of these different groups, we've put different teachers in the chairs. We've looked at the teachers, we've moved some around, there's some that are no longer with us, but we've made sure that what we've done is that we've looked to see who's the best fit for these kids. Instead of just randomly, the first new teacher comes in and gets this class, we wanted to make sure that we were strategically placing them. And I think that we're gonna see even more increases this year with what we've done. We did have increases in almost every one of the areas. They were minimal and not near where they need to be, but they will be next year. Attendance, you can see that we had a dip. In 15-16, it was 93.2. I came in October of 16-17. And when we came in, we started looking at our attendance. We started looking at the way we were taking attendance and the accountability, started putting some structures in. And I think that's why we have the dip right there in that particular, well, we stayed the same, but instead of having an increase. But we too sent someone to the conference today to try to get more information on things that we need to do. But again, that host sparked the heart. If we don't get the kids where they want to come to school, it doesn't matter which one of these programs we do. We want a $5,000 competitive grant for attendance, for incentives. And I can buy every incentive in the world. But if I can't get a kid to want to come to school and feel like they belong at this school, it doesn't matter what I offer them. And so we're really working a lot with our social emotional piece to get our kids here. We want to provide for them an understanding that with our teachers and staff, it's important for them to be here too. And so we're really working with awareness for our teachers and staff as well as our students on what it looks like to increase attendance, because those teachers are modeling that behavior. If they're not in the classroom, then the kids don't think it's important for them to be in the classroom. In fostering those relationships, we talked about the parent liaison. We're really working with this year closely with our parent liaison and our social emotional counselor to try to bring more parents into the school. We've actually made some arrangements on some different classroom sizes and locations so that we can bring our parents in so that they feel comfortable being in the school. Because the more comfortable they are visiting and we can bring them in, I don't know if y'all know Linda Contreras, she's done all kinds of things to help make the parents feel comfortable. They did tamale making, mum making. But you know, we want to do those fun things to bring the parents in and develop those relationships. Working with the Greater San Marcos Youth Council like the rest of them. And also participating in clubs. I've always been a principal that said every student should belong to a club or organization on the campus. And I usually will stand up and say, you must. Well, I can't force them, but I want them to, because if they belong to something on this campus, they're gonna wanna get up. No one gets up in the morning and says, yay, I wanna go to school for physics. Well, they might, some of y'all. But I never did. I wanted to get up and go to school for band. I wanted to get up and go to school for student council. I wanted to get up and go for journalism. There were all those different reasons, but if we can get kids more aligned and in those activities, then I think we'll see a lot. Again, we did get a $5,000 grant, so we will be using some incentives, but our goal is 95% attendance for this year, and it is starting now, not later. The social-emotional piece, some of you all may not know it, but I was a social-emotional counselor for about 13 years. I was a stand coordinator. And one of the things that I found that was one of the most important things is it wasn't just me. I worked with the counselors, and we also trained about 25 teachers on our staff that helped us do support groups. And that is one of the goals that I have in working with my social-emotional counselor, is to train our teachers to be active listeners, train our teachers to be there for those support groups and work with those kids. We have a 1-hour lunch. There is no reason for us not to be providing all types of groups, but we can't have one person can't do it. We've got to have an army of people. But it's going to take some time to train those teachers to do that. When you look at our in-school suspensions, 629, that's horrific. But out of those 629, I will tell you the large majority of those kids were at school, counted absent, and ended up in ISS. Because they would come to school, many of them, and go hide in the bathrooms. We'd find them, and the only way we could keep them any place was to put them in ISS. So, well, all of a sudden, we're in this vicious circle. So this year, we've changed the name of ISS to Rattler Academy. There will be all types of activities that they'll be charged with to do, and we'll be decreasing the number of in-school suspensions to after-school suspension, and on Saturday with community service. And it's going to take a huge effort. We're going to have to be out there with them picking up trash. But whenever they become part of this community, then they're going to be here. And if they are skipping class, let's not put them in school suspension. Let's go sit by them in that English class, and they're going to hate it. And they're going to eventually say, well, I'm not going to skip. I'm just going to go to classes, have Turnbull sitting by me all during the class. And I don't want to do it at all. Our out-of-school suspensions went up a little bit. Mainly the out-of-school suspensions really truly had to do with acts of, well, they weren't mandatory. The mandatory were the DAEP. We didn't do very many, most of ours were mandatory. We didn't send our kids to DAEP. If we could keep from it, we'd suspend them first to try to keep that, because if we suspended them, they'd be gone 3 days. If they DAEP, they'd be gone 30 to 45 days. And so we did everything we could to keep them from doing those long placements. The Rattler Academy, having that in a positive, working with the kids. A year ago, or y'all heard where we stood with Emergent Tree. It was dismal. Our teachers didn't even know what Emergent Tree is. So we're working very hard to expand those strategies so that our teachers act positively and have those good interactions with our kids. We didn't even have RTI 2 years ago. Last year we introduced it, and now we have a method to give support and accommodations and helping hands to kids that are struggling without them having a label on them. Just the regular kids to help them get through the process. Also, using the Bright Bites and the PD. Our special population support, we are going to go with the whole IEP, the ILP, individual learning plan, where we have scheduled our special ed and our regular teachers together so that they sit down and they look at what the lesson is, and then they plan individually for those kids. Because when you have a co-teacher go into a room and they don't even know what's being taught, it's very core area along with myself so that they are instructional leaders on the campus as well. And we are so excited that we get our kids back. Phoenix is transitioning onto this campus, and it has been a wonderful experience. Ms. Hicks has been a breath of fresh air, and the things and the ideas we have for our kids for CTE and getting more certifications for those kiddos is going to be awesome, and also the same as everybody else. So targeted tutorials, blah, 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 those things. But what we're doing more than anything is we want the teachers, we want everyone to spark the heart in our kids so that we can get to their heads, because I feel like that's what's lacking. Mr. Ardama, you was asking about the attendance piece. I think that's a big part of it. You asked about the PALs. We are going to have PAL program. There used to be a PAL program here years ago. That's another thing the Social Emotional Council is going to work on, because more kids will talk to the students than they will to adults. So we are working towards that. I talked real fast, and I had it timed down to the very minute that I got excited. Sorry.
Questions, anybody? Guess not.
You answered everything.
You answered everything.
Ms. I don't have a question. I was just gonna say that I like the numbers that I see, that these have gone up. In, history and English 1 and English 2. That's very encouraging, you know, that sure is. So I'm very optimistic about that.
And
more
I would
numbers.
like to invite y'all, when you have a chance, come by and walk classrooms with us. I would love for you to come do a walk. I mean, I'm serious. Now, I'm not gonna stage it, so what you see is what you get. It may be one of those days, but I want you to see what's happening here. I want you to understand, because then I feel like you're gonna be very proud when you see what our kids are doing. They're doing a great job.
I like that you changed in-school suspension to Rattler Academy.
Yes, ma'am.
I really.
It's more positive.
Well, it's a
And they gotta
psychological
work.
thing, and it's, I think, yes, it is.
Ms. Villapondo? Ms. Villapondo had a
I
question.
wanna say that I wanna come see the aquaponics program. I learned about it at STEM Fair, and, well, I knew what because I had an opportunity to learn from somebody who's been in Thailand. But, then I came to STEM Fair and found that we are teaching it. Do we still have it?
We're doing all kinds of things. I'll take you on a tour. It'll make your heads
I
go.
love it.
Okay?
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say that this is was so easy to follow. I like this format.
Yes, thank you.
Instead of just numbers and stuff all over.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Barton.
Mr.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr. Bart.
Mr. Superintendent, I know this conversation and this presentation was sparked out of a conversation we had after our last comprehensive academic update. And say for the better part of 10 years, I sat in the gallery hearing academic presentations from previous administrations and under former boards. And it's really exciting to see where our school district is, and I appreciate the energy from the administrators in their presentations, owning the challenges that they have with their students and student achievement, but then also the excitement that they have about the opportunities. So thank y'all, all y'all.
I want to thank them too. I'm sure they were a little bit nervous.
They'll be better at it next
meet
year.
privately
They'll
without
be
me.
less nervous next year.
That's good. And you also heard about school status. That's,
Ours will be better next year, so we won't be so nervous.
they will be better. They will be better. No, I also appreciate them, but you heard school status. So when you call a bank or when you call somebody, you always hear this thing that says you're being recorded. So school status is a way for us to communicate with parents. It does let the parents know you're being recorded. And the reason why we do that is to protect both the parent and also to protect the staff members, because we all know, we've had those people say, so-and-so cursed me out when they call me, and then, so now we actually have a way, because it translates into both English and Spanish. So we can get a transcript of every conversation that we're having with parents and with students and whoever. So I just think it makes us, there may be times when some of our staff members mess up, and it's like, well, you need to fix your practice here. So it's not to catch anybody, it's just to support everybody.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I mean, it's good to see campus leaders take ownership what's happening in their campus, and that's real good, and what you have outlined. You had mentioned before the presentation that tomorrow you're getting results, and, because I really would like to see these numbers according to groups.
Yeah, that'll be in
That's gonna
August.
be tomorrow,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Okay, so that, we will get that information regarding. At some point in time, we will get that to where, right now, we're just seeing whole numbers, but I think you know me by now that I like to see group percentages that fall in there. Right. And thank you, Mr. Massini, for mentioning, talking about, you know, working at the bottom level to where, you know, everything gets better. Hopefully, if we're on track for grades as they go up, the meeting, it will be there. The percentage of the meets will be there, and I'm looking forward to that. I am very optimistic. I like, you know, I see several numbers there. Some of them have, you know, maybe 40s, 50s that meets, and I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the campus at that level as well. And if, you know, hopefully with Miss, what was your last name? I can't remember. At Bonham, when you mentioned, yeah, that it starts there, and hopefully maybe the focus will be there for it to really establish that foundation. And I'm very optimistic. So by just the fact of these presentations, that just gives me, I'm more encouraged that y'all are taking, like I said, ownership to what's going on in your campuses. Thank you.
Ms. Hanson?
I also want to thank the campus administrators for taking your time and efforts to explain to us what has happened and the plans for the future. It makes a big difference for us. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
It does feel like you have complete ownership, and your leadership is going to be so important this year. So hats off to y'all. I think that we're done.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.